Outstanding. We made it through 3.5 days, 4 days of a work week, and it's time to drink. And if you've been paying attention to the news, there is, as I am now fond of saying, a lot to drink about. So we are in the midst of spring. It hasn't really arrived so much in Chicago just yet. There's a little bit of signs that it will be here sooner or later. It's kind of interesting. In early February, we had a day in the 70s, and we haven't come close to the 70s since. So spring in wine regions of the world is usually marked not only by the calendar, but it's marked by this color, rosé. And rosé is something that many of us can drink all year round, especially sparkling rosé. So we are huge fans of rosé in the Cellar Angels world, and we're coming live again from the Cellar Angels World headquarters. I'm not gonna swirl my glass on the conference table. Last week I got yelled at because it will scratch the conference table. So can't do that. But I do want to talk to you about rosé and just how exceptional it is. So this is the Keller Estate Rosé, made from the Keller Estate. Anna Keller is the winemaker, co-winemaker, I believe. She's also a biochemist, so there's that to throw into the mix. But they're in the Sonoma area, and it's a winery that I've probably driven by no fewer than 50 times and haven't even seen it, which is interesting because it's a sprawling estate with hundreds of acres. And as I like to say, they were a winery that was a car problem with a wine solution. And if you ever go to Keller Estate, you can see that Arturo Keller had a strong hobby with cars, and he was really looking for a place to drive cars. So he found this wonderful rolling ranch, and they decided to build a track where you could actually drive cars around. And it's not an oval track. It's up and down over hills and around. It would be the exact track that you would like to take a high performance car on, a motorcycle or something like that, because it's gorgeous countryside. But it's the countryside that they recognized after quite a few years that, hey, this is prime grape growing region. So we need to plant some grapes. So they do make world-class Chardonnay, world-class Pinot Noir, and Keller Estate in Sonoma is largely recognized as doing it the right way and have been for quite some time. We are fortunate to be able to feature this on Cellar Angels right now. So it is reduced in price because they want to help us raise some money for some charities, and as do we. So this wine is normally $35. It's not even on their website, okay? So you can't get it. It's usually kind of a nice little thing that they send to some of their preferred customers, is my understanding. But they only have 94 cases. So when you make a world-class rosé like this, you're not gonna make a lot of it because of the juice is 100% Pinot Noir, and it all comes from their estate right there in Sonoma. So now I mentioned we're gonna talk about numbers, and I think there's a lot of confusion in the wine industry, especially when you walk into a wine store anywhere in the country and you look at row upon row of bottles. And it's a little bit confusing for even someone with intermediate wine knowledge to figure out what wine should I be choosing. Similarly, if you go to a restaurant in Chicago, Vegas, Miami, Denver, Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, and you go to a nice steakhouse, generally the wines all look the same, and there's a reason for that. And that's the numbers I want to talk to you about. There are 1,500 wineries between Napa and Sonoma alone. And did you know there's about 1,000 of them you can't purchase outside of California because they lack distribution. So this is the challenge when you go to wine country and then you get back home to Minnesota, or you get back home to Wisconsin or Florida, and you look around for the wine you fell in love with. They don't have it there because the winery just doesn't make enough. The distributor's not going to carry it because if someone only made 94 cases, it's going to be hard to distribute that. So Cellar Angels thought, let's solve that problem. Let's get these wineries some exposure. Let's get this wine into the hands of wine lovers. And really, that's what Cellar Angels is all about, and raise some money for charity. And this is a wine that is, I could drink all day, and might in the very near future, because it's that good. As you can see, it's got that pale pink salmon color, and when I smell it, it has really very soft, ripe strawberry and watermelon. The watermelon, it gets often, I think, tossed around and used as a term for wine tasting, and it's confusing because when you grow up with fresh watermelon, but then you also have the Jolly Rancher candy, it's a little bit different. So think fresh watermelon at the farmer's market when you get that home and you slice that open and you have that brilliant color and you have that aroma that you can smell from a room away, and you know that there's watermelon being served and your mouth starts watering. That's what I get here, a little whiff of that. So as I said, no dump bucket, so that is delicious. Very low alcohol, I think 13.2%. It's no burn whatsoever. It has great acidity. I think Carrie, our chief operating angel, wrote that there's some wet stone minerality, and there is. It's almost not flinty, but a little slaty softness, really, that has some nice minerality in it, and then a long finish, which is great. And as I said, $29, difficult to beat a Pinot Noir Rosé, 100% Pinot Noir. We can get technical and geeky in how it's made. It's made in what is known as the Sanyé method, not to be confused with Sanjay Gupta on CNN, but you could just take that J and make it a Y and pronounce it Sanyé. It's not spelled that way, so please don't write it that way. It's Saignee, and there's an accent over the first E, but it's a French term, obviously, and what it means is to bring the grapes into the crusher, destem them, put them into the tank, and you have a method to where the juice is in contact with the skins. Now, Keller Estate has 8 hours of skin contact, and this actually impacts the color. So if it was going to be 12 hours or 16 hours, the color would be darker. The more skin to juice contact, the darker the wine. And there's also no malolactic fermentation here, which is another geeky thing I don't necessarily want to talk about because it's boring. What's not boring is what this can pair with. First of all, it's an awesome, what's referred to as a patio pounder, to where you can drink this all day long in the patio, in the shade. It's not a big red wine, and it's not a crisp, acidic white wine. It's right in between. And it just goes right down the line of really well-balanced, pure, grapefruit flavors, and just something that is truly delicious. I could, a little orange blossom. That sounded really geeky from that standpoint. But the one thing that I love about Rosé, especially world-class Rosé, is what it's not. It's not white Zinfandel. So if you grew up in the 80s and you were exposed to that, this is anything but that. This is a demarcation of spring in France, in Spain, in Italy, to where the weather has finally started to warm, and now it's time to be out on the patio, out on the veranda, out dining al fresco, and having a great glass of wine as the sun sits in the sky a little bit longer and hangs out with you a little bit longer into the evening. And that's what Rosé is all about, bringing people together, sharing some great conversation. And man, that is darn good. So, limited time, just a couple weeks left. 94 cases, not going to last. Do yourselves a favor. Throw me a question. We'll put this up on Facebook and maybe on our YouTube channel and see what happens. But this is really a premier site in Sonoma. They draw from 2 microclimate influences because they're near the Petaluma Gap. So they've got these cool Pacific Ocean breezes just coming in every afternoon, cooling down the valley. And they're also close enough to the San Pablo Bay that they get some cool microclimate exposure that way. So Pinot Noir loves cold, damp weather, does not like a lot of heat spikes. They make a world-class Pinot Noir, a world-class Chardonnay, and Keller Estate, biodynamically farmed, sustainable farming. They just don't want to mess with the land. They're trying to keep the land perfect and pristine for generations to come. And the proof is really in the bottle. So we hope you're able to grab some. Thanks so much, and we will catch up with you next week on No Dump Bucket. Cheers.